just like to run through, before we get into the running order, I'd like to thank today's sponsor, Nexo, a supporting member of the ISCVA, and would also like to extend our thanks to Rich Soper for his support. So let's go ahead or get ahead with the first seminar presented by the PAI group, Paul Adams, Richard Vaughan and Stuart Williams, who will give an inside look at the installation journey of the stadium sign system. Following the presentation, there'll be an opportunity, I think it's about 12:15, to have a stadium tour. We'll back here around about, 1:10 for the next seminar, which again will be another an hour or so, and then we'll break for lunch at about 2:15. But anyway, let's crack on, and I'd like to welcome PAI guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim, and good morning to everybody, and welcome here in Cardiff to, what is a sensational stadium. We love it because, of course, we're Indigenous here in Wales. We're hoping to put together this morning quite an informal sort of presentation all round, so we can just sort of chill and get a full understanding of the installation that took place here in 2023 and the upgrade. Meet some of the people involved in that installation and hear about the challenges associated with it. First of all, just give you a little bit of background about us if you're not familiar with us. We are PAI, and we're made up of 3 separate identities, which my original company, PAI, was established basically in the early 80s, and we sort of built nightclubs and enjoyed the leisure industry in that way for quite a few years. Then we moved into retail through the 90s and were best known for our involvement with Warner Brothers Cinemas, Disney stores, and Hard Rock cafes. In 1997, Vaughan Sound joined the company and became the first, or the second company within the group, and is headed up by Richard Vaughan, the son of the famous David Vaughan, who's well known in Welsh rugby circles, but is sadly not with us here anymore. Thirdly, in our little company group, we have lighting integration. Lighting integration, LTP to LTI as we know it, is our lighting arm for the basically for lighting buildings, monuments and bridges across the UK. So it's our architectural lighting arm, but everything is brought together with the technical expertise of a group of engineers, which are all sort of working within the same synergy. So we're able to manage all the different disciplines that we run with. Our first involvement, microphones are low here. Our first involvement with the stadium was in 2010, and at that time we came in and did a system upgrade here in conjunction with our client, Alex Luff, who you will be meeting a little bit later on. I'll give you a bit more background on that. And at the time, we added a digital backbone, digital processing, new amplification, and sub-bass. We also repaired many horns, loudspeakers, and additionally, we provided a new independent sort of mapping of the audio and acoustically reset the entire system, and moved on with a support contract for the stadium, where we supported every event that took place and provided rolling maintenance. This then led to 2023 and the new Pro system that we upgraded to, which Richard will tell you all about the challenges involved for. Also, I'd like to introduce a couple of people here today. Apart from myself and Richard Vaughan, we've got Stuart Williams, who's our Senior Project Manager, and Stuart is responsible and has been sort of the anchor engineer here from the get-go in 2010. and you'll be meeting him later. He'll be organising the tour. Francois Defarge has come over from France for Nexo and is at the back, and he will be doing a presentation later on the whole design and how basically each system is individually designed and delivered for every different stadium out there. Richard Soper is here from Nexo as well, as one of the sales managers, as is Nick Bolton, wherever he is. Nick's about. Again, you'll meet Nick a little bit later on. And then we have to introduce formally Alex left for the stadium. Alex is the head of sales and ops here, that's right, isn't it? And Alex has kindly come along today. He's going to give you a little tour en route to the Royal Box a bit later on for you to hear the system in action. But he's also going to answer any questions that you may have in the Q&A session that will follow a little bit later on. Right now, though, I'd like to introduce Richard. And before Richard does his presentation, we'd like to run a short video all about the installation that we did in 2023. Thanks.
The Principality Stadium, formerly Millennium Stadium, opened in 1999 for the Rugby World Cup. It's located right in the heart of Cardiff city centre, and it's the home of the Welsh Rugby Union. We're an elite stadium, 75,000 seats. When fans come here, there's an expectation of the best spectator experience possible. High quality sound is a very large part of that. So we decided that we needed a new, state-of-the-art, modern sound system.
When the intention to further upgrade the audio system was announced, we were absolutely delighted to be invited to be part of the design and build process. Over a period of several years, intensive acoustic testing, design was progressed, and the contract for the supply of all the loudspeakers was awarded to Nexo.
We've worked with PAI and Vaughan Sounds many times over the years. We know the quality of work that they produce is exceptional.
This is a coming together of so many technical disciplines, really.
It's a very good example of how positive and good can be the collaboration between Nexo and its partners, and in this specific case, this is a PI and Vaughan Sound.
The challenge for us here at the stadium was upgrading the system with as little modification to the existing cable infrastructure as possible. We manufactured a prototype for the main frame arrays down at our headquarters in Llanelli, and then invited the WIU down to see the system in operation. Thanks to Nexo's design team, they had a solution in the GOS 12 arrays powered by the highly powered NX amps, which meant no modifications for the 18 main arrays. With some minor cable adjustments, we were able to incorporate 10 L18 sub-arrays and 4 pitch arrays. With a custom dolly, the arrays were pre-assembled and netted in the bus bays and then forked into the bowl for hoisting into position. These main arrays are then complemented by the rear P12s and P10s. The VIP balconies have ID24s, and there's lower balcony has P8s.
PAI has a great knowledge of sports arena installations, and it went really fast. I believe the entire installation was completed in less than 3 months.
Primarily, the system is for public address and voice evacuation, which has to be compliant and has to deliver sound pressure levels and, more importantly, intelligibility into every seat.
We were there at all steps, supporting them, and we were there at the end, because this is really the mission that is assigned to engineering support. It's not only about pre-sales, it's also following up during the installation.
The value the system brings to the Principality Stadium now is matching, meeting, and probably exceeding customer expectation and promoter expectation about the spectator experience that fans will have when they come here. We know that the system provides top quality sound to meet the standards of both concerts and the incredible atmosphere at rugby matches.
Principality Stadium in Cardiff is one of the top additions of Sports Arena reference for Nexo.
For us, it was down to the quality of the product, it was down to the cost and their international pedigree.
It performs beyond primary safety requirements and takes the sound presentation for every spectator seat to a new level in this wonderful stadium.
Right, here am I on? Morning, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, it's probably some of the youngsters, I'm Richard Vaughan. I've been also lucky enough to be recently made a fellow of the industry, or the Institute. So I don't know if that's a long service award or a hint to retire. So I've been involved since 1990. So obviously, with things like this, the systems involved have changed dramatically since the original Arms Park. We had exponential horns on one single tower rack here. So just to give you a brief going on there. But since Welsh Rugby and the Principality Stadium. So since 1999, Wales have had 5 Triple Crowns, 4 Grand Slams, 6 Five Nations, 5 Six Nations Championships, and rose to #1 in the world rankings. You know, and there they are in 2019, winning everything again. And in 2023, a Nexo system was installed. And it's been downhill slide since. So between Gareth and Francois, we think it's an Anglo-French plot. So anyway, but that's a bit of humour there. Let's get it going now. So as you know, the stadium's right in the heart of Cardiff, and it is pretty impressive. And if you've ever been to an event, it is superbly. You don't have to go walking miles like you do in other places. You get off the train, and you're here. And if you're lucky enough, you can get a train home at night then. But it's got, in summary, it's just shy of 74,000 capacity now, because they've taken a few. You know, it hosts rugby, concerts, speedway, football. Boxing has been a recent addition as well. If we can get them back off the Saudis, Alex, you know, it's like that. You know, because I've had some of the events, if you're lucky enough to be here, are tremendous, right? Spread over 7 levels. There's 113 hospitality boxes, several hospitality suites like this and larger ones which keep changing by the day. And it's probably around about 20 to 25 major events go on here every year. So rugby matches have now become almost a sense of theatre as the teams come out, as you'll have seen. And they're pretty much a very, very stage-managed event. So we are involved with that, but they are handling everything then from your traditional male voice choir, a band, right up to live events, pitch-side interviews. There's a lot going on. In addition to that, you've seen the concerts going on, and they've been lucky enough recently. You've had Taylor Swift, Oasis, Coldplay, Walls, Sirius stadium tours, which are going here because of what's going on. But in addition to that, then, we've had Speedway, which is another major change. You can imagine a Speedway track appearing out there. We've had monster trucks, and I think from my point of view, one of the most amazing ones was the WWE wrestling, which was incredible out there, what they actually physically put in here from that point of view. And then the other thing, recently, the fitness people here, they had High Rocks events on that pitch. They took it out, and they had how many hundreds, thousands of people doing High Rocks here, all the fitness fanatics. But anyhow, as Paul said earlier, we've had an involvement since 2010. I'm not going to go on about that too much now, so I'll be repeating ourselves. But the other thing we did at the time then, because we inherited a system then, we did, because the boys here from Bowling Box, so we put a Vigil 2 in then, just to act as a compliant distribution system, and then started working backwards. But in 2010 then, I was lucky enough to attain the as-fitted drawings, which suddenly became a major hint. So what I'm going to talk to you about today then is the practical installation of us putting this sort of system, working out what's here, and then actually physically getting it installed then. Stuart and Francois will talk to you about networks and all that, because as someone who's come from the 80s, as you can imagine, networks now are a little bit past my sell-by date. So, Right, so in the ground itself, we obviously got the voice alarm back of house. System's working for non-event mode, and then it flips to a main bowl system for entertainment for event mode. It's a 24/7 stadium. So the boys you'd come in, you come into security, they've got their own touch mic, the main 5 mics there. That'll flip up to the control mic, which I think we're going to see afterwards over there. And then they've also got, obviously, there's pitch inputs from the tunnel and up on the gantry, where they're actually controlling everything from, because it's a pretty impressive video studio here as well for TV on a match day, which is everything's managed from that room over there. So all we're doing is taking the audio feed out of that. But then on a match day, then they'll be doing pitch side interviews with they take a feed off the BBC and things like that. So there's a lot going on. So you will see that when you have our little visit, walk around later. So the current voice alarm now, we've upgraded to a Baldwin Boxall Visual 3. So that's going around the rack. We're in the south now, north's over there, and obviously you've got east there now. So we got 100-volt line racks, east and west. And coming out of that then, we got, I think it's up to 220 circuits in radials going out, all with end-of-line monitoring on them. So, but then obviously then, once the match day comes into mode, touch screen of that takes mode then for emergency events for getting messages outside then. So, anyway, that's up in the actual controlling with their touch screen. They've also got a mimic display on there as well, because on a match day, the QSys kicks in. But they've got their set messages, another little thing from our point of view. General safe announcements are bilingual, but then safety messages we just put out in English because it's an international stadium. But we have got a fine line in Wales now because we're legally bound to say things in Welsh as well. So the monitor and the loudspeakers, in fairness to Tony, ourselves, one of the old school engineers, he was having to pick up, out of those 220, he had to go and trace them. I know it sounds daft, but he had to physically go and trace those, because this was an install from the 90s, where we had, I think, one circuit coming back onto a big crest amp. I think he had 36 radials to sort out. So working your end of line, so we've gone through the Baldwin Boxall quad amps, then you've got another 4 out of that to minimize your monitoring, and it's worked pretty well now, so we pretty much now know exactly what goes where. It's a certain challenge. We've also got, you might, if you have a look on your way out, on the roof as part of the match day experience, but more for spectator safety, there's some very big CD horns on the roof, which have been driven up. So you can make an announcement. You walk down that ramp, and you've got the big ramp there with the statue. There's a massive CD horn there, which literally, covers St Mary Street. So it's there, and you're going up the bridge. You go up the walkway there. There's horns all the way up there as well. So from that point of view. Going on the main bowl, which I think is what most of you wanted to come to see there. Installed, there's a total of 18 line arrays going all around the ground. Total of 160 boxes in those. There's 50 delays just outside them. Then you'll see it run go and fill in the rear side of it. There's another 120 balcony and hospitality speakers. You've got these little ID24s here, which has filled this little 2 or 3 rows of seats, which was always a bit of a blank spot. And then you've got the P8s downstairs, which was mentioned earlier. In addition to that now, we've got 30 18-inch subs up at high level, which you will see. And we've also got 4 clusters filling a pitch then, as well then, with, again, the Geo S1210s. And they're all the N54 models they are as well. There they are then in situ. They are then fed. We've got to feed the high level. We've got 2 racks east, 2 racks west. They're up on the actual roof of the stand, but they're in very nice plant rooms, air conditions, very well thought out. So as I'll come on now, the infrastructure here, which we benefited from a great deal, is excellent. It's very, very well thought out from day one, the way they put this stadium together, in fairness to them. Like that. And there's a total of 43 NX amplifiers installed then, which are either 4x1s, 4x2s, or 4x4s, depending on the requirement. There's a finished speaker up at high level. You know, I mentioned it earlier. If you look close, we've got some bird netting on there, which is another little challenge we came across, I'll mention afterwards, because they got, I don't know what he's officially called, Alex, a hawkman, hawk person, you can't go in the PC. But they've got a hawk here to keep the pigeons out, because obviously birds is a problem up there. So I think putting the net up has only moved the problem somewhere else now. I think. And then there's some of the delays, and you'll see then on the right then there's some of the 18-inch subs which are in pairs, threes, depending on the requirement of what we were given then. So the main bolt distribution, we follow the guidelines of 7827 as far as we possibly can to the best of our ability. We've got 2 QSys Core 610 processors in there, which Stuart will bring you up. The best questions were those. You'll see them working in the control room, right? So please ask questions to us later on that. Primary and secondary networks running around for those. We've also got another 2 networks running. Again, the boys will bring you up today. Dual redundancy throughout. We got the NEMO system with Nexo doing fault monitoring, which gives us information of anything happening in here. But on a match day, we actually operate the system. So anything that comes up will be alerted of it. So we'll come in on a pre-event test the day before. It's part of their policy here. We'll actually operate the boys a year from any major event they hear operating, and then we'll shut it down. But then it revert the whole system back to voice alarm then once everyone's left. So that's going on there. And coming on there, there's our actual one of the samples of the rack. See those, Stu will take you into a rack room later on and give you, those who are interested, and give you a bit more information on it. So how do we get there to get a system like that? Well, in fairness, after the tender policy processes have gone together, we worked very, very closely then with Nexo's technical team, particularly Francois, Carol back in Paris, and Christophe, who was involved here a lot then. So basically, we'd worked out, we know we've got 66 loudspeaker fixing points at high level around there, which have got really very, very good, well thought out fixing points. As long as you get a hoister, you can raise and lower a cluster quite easily. So fairness, going back to the 90s when they started this stadium, it was very well thought out. So we haven't had the challenges. Certain time you go in and you've got to bring a Z80 in, or an arm, a cherry picker, whatever, to get up there, and then you've got to do battle with the groundsman because he won't let you on the pitch, and you've got everything else you'll experience in that. And in addition to that, pretty much at every one of those positions, on the rears, there's at least ones, every other one is 2. It's a 6 mil and a 10 mil running everywhere from these rack rooms. So from our point of view, we didn't have the problem of having to run pretty serious cables into position, because it was already put in place for us, which was a major bonus from that point of view. Our maximum cable distance in here, saying it quick, is 160 meters. We got 1 or 2 to get down to here, just because if you have a close look lately, you've got gantry at the front and a gantry at the rear, and you can get round, and you can pretty much walk 360 degrees all the way around the ground. Issue you've got moving forward will be getting back to the rack rooms, because that is a logistical nightmare, and it would, if you don't scaffold it out, it would be a major problem. When we were going through the design process with Nexo, we came in and we did some RT times, and we were obviously roof open, roof closed, and it was pretty much, when you go to an environment like that, that's just before a concert now, roof's closed, the pitch is in, the RT time then goes up to around about 11 to 12 seconds, depending where you stand in. So Nexo themselves then had brought in Richard Northwood from RH Consulting, and he acted on behalf of Nexo then to give readings and feed out all his information back in to the system, because it is, and then obviously roof open on a nice grass pitch, it goes down to round about 5.5, 6 seconds, depending again where you are then on an RT time. So, and obviously you get bodies in, yeah, and then it's not so bad then, but it is, it's wherever you go with any sports ground, it's a major factor, and we've gone to, right, going to the initial installation and planning process, because what we've had this, we were then given a design by Nexo, basically said, right, go and fit these 160 boxes up there. So, but it's not as simple as that from our point of view. So we'd put in then a process. We'd actually designed ourselves and got manufactured a bracket like that, which is a prototype of what went up. We brought the client down to our premises then to see it, managed to hoist it up, and that's Darren, the FM and actually what goes up onto the gantry to actually fix the post. But this process took about 2 to 3 months because you can't just see the physical size of it. You can't just knock a bracket up like that. The other little thing then was the positioning of where the balance in it. Everyone was slightly different. The two stands with it as it changes around. Get the design exactly right from that point of view. And then obviously we got that prototype done and signed off then, and as it hanging up. So that was then sort of agreed to that, and then we then got, after that process, then get that manufactured by a company who was a structural design, get it signed off by the structural design engineer, and then physically get it manufactured by someone. And then we learned a learning curve then about coded welding, Paul, wasn't it? Was that the term? Which was another one, eh? But what we were lucky enough at the time, you might have seen, there's a roof walk gone in here now. So we worked closely then with a company called ProSteel, who actually did the roof walk and the zip wire. And they were a great help to us in actually manufacturing all the bracketry that was needed, and it was signed. So obviously then, we came in on a Sunday then to actually fly it ourselves to see, it's all well and good having it made, but if you put it up there, is it exactly right? Is it the right mill? Is it the right thing? You know, the best one in the world, it's never going to be right. The other thing we made, see the little dolly there? Which was for moving the damn thing around the ground. Because these are, each one of these is weighing round about 140, 150. Idea of the weight of it. So, and then that's the process. So we actually brought one in and got it up then on a weekend to do a trial. And obviously then we were able to do a bit of a demonstration with the client and get everyone then with there was it going up then. But I'll come on to later then, the physicality of getting a hoist up to that level, because obviously you're not going to have a hoist of that side there. There's the thing in situ then. But the actual installation itself then, we've got around the ground, you see the other gantry. Take that out, and then below that you've got a big 20mm eye bolt with plate, and then the best way of describing it, 20 bolts come into what looks like a bit of unistrut. So it's very, very well thought out, which is a bit of a godsend to us. And then, as everything from our point of view was signed off on that, there's a sort of, that's one on the right, there's one of the smaller ones, then, the delay. That's the fixing point you've got, and you can see the eye bolts. And like I say, I'll be honest with you, I'll show you another picture then, because on the main bowl installation. So when you've got the equipment all delivers, you'll have seen the side of the bus space over there, that one on the right. We pretty much took over half of that because we have a load coming in from Nexo and everything else coming in. Yeah? About 2 Arctics come in full of speakers. You've got to get them out and then start dismantling them, getting a 1210 or a 1230 in the right position with the right flares and the right horns. It's a bit of a logistical challenge that way. And then we started into a bit of a production line back of house before the speakers actually come out into the bay then. And then, I think this is the one now. There you are. There's a bit of a time lapse then. Assembling line array on one of the dollies, which each one took round about an hour to get ready. 4 or 5 hours. But everyone done. And then obviously we test that then back of house and then get it out into position. And then that's our famous dolly going up into position. We actually had to make 3 dollies as well then to actually take the weight so you weren't damaging any speakers, like that. You could see there, I mentioned earlier, the bird netting was fitted to each one, but we worked with a hawk person on that one. And then additionally, another thing to bear in mind from out there, a stadium like us, extremely busy. And at the time then, it wasn't just us working here. The roof walk going on there, zip wire going in, they're doing new floodlight in, they put in that LED in, and they were changing all the back of house lighting to LED, so with everything. So to do it then, I think we used to have a sort of fortnightly planning meeting, who's working in each part of the ground then, and then then we're flying stuff then, and all of a sudden then he'll get someone doing a stadium tour with a load of school kids walking under you and things like that. But it's just a challenge to, something new expect, and I think the beauty of it, everyone got on with it then. There's an example then. That's working then through the gantry then. And then there's your finished look, which you've obviously seen up there now, haven't you? Like installation challenges. Like I say, from that image there, working at height isn't for everyone. It's quite a hairy, because you're walking along on that gantry, you're looking down either at grass or you're looking down on the stuff they bring in for concerts. And it ain't for everyone, from that point of view, because you're 120 foot up, it is. That's the sort of height of the stadium. When we're assembling the speakers then, the hoist, obviously for the bigger, we had to get a bigger hoist, which we had to dismantle, take up on the gantry, get in position, reassemble it, and get it in. But then we had two of them going in a bit of a tandem. That's how we did it, actually. Physically doing it. And then the other thing, we had Stuart one night, it was actually because he's so far from power, the 110 was dropping out, so the winches were running out of power because you couldn't get the power down the 110 volt lines to them like that. And also, it was like another thing, he said, moving around the grounds, it's the physical, you tucked on the far right corner there, you've got everything there. You can only go so fast in a forklift and getting around. Everything takes time in a big stadium, apart from stating the bleeding obvious. The other thing then, which is another one, is removal and disposal of the old kit, which was part of our remit. But that's just a short sample of what physically came out. But then also we had to dismantle that and then put it into 5 different wee skips. Again, then, from doing that, it's about a 3 to 4 week process. So it's just sort of, anyone looking at that, it's a sort of major thing to, your contingency could disappear on that. And in fairness to the client, they brought in big skips for us and we put everything in there. Those are community R.6 base horns there. And just to give you an idea of the physical size of them, that's John there, and he's about 6 foot tall, so that's just, and then we had to cut the damn things up, take the drivers out, take the brackets off. So what do we do on a match day then? From our sort of input, we do a pre-event testing 24 hours before any major event. We will come in then and do match day operation. We then manage, there's live boys on the pitch, do the anthems, the choirs, whatever. They've got 16 Sennheiser radio mics here on site licenses, which again, and they work closely then with the different TV studios, because you've got BBC on one band, we're on another band. They've sort of sorted all that out in the background. There's a pitch side mixer with Dante down on the tunnel, which you see, and there's another pitch side mixer up at the TV studio, and then they feed it up. And as you can see what's going on, it's quite a major event here. And then I think talking to Alex, he'll tell you they're forcing more and more on you doing halftime entertainment now than ever before. So there's a lot going on, and also they're bringing live video links in, and there's a lot. It's quite a fair's the boys doing. There's a fair bit of things going on. There's also 2 announcers. There'll be a pitch side announcer there doing teams, and there's a permanent announcer up there doing scores. Like I say, they're bilingual as iron. You've got the challenges then of 2 different voices, things like that. Got one of them's predominantly pro-Welsh, and one of them's predominantly, he's got a much better English voice, and it's that sort of little things to contend with like that. We've actually put in as well, there's a Dante input for concert use. So if they ever want to come in and use the delays or use the under balconies they've used a few times, just to get the sound back into the bars. A few of the concert people have actually used it now, because once you mention there's acoustics on it, they're okay with it. Some will, some won't, but that's just it's a facility that's there for them. I think we used it as well with the wrestling as well. They wanted a few in the corners because they suddenly, even though they brought stuff in, I think they were limited because they brought so much stuff in they couldn't hang any more off the roof. But that's when it had a huge circular LED screen hanging down the middle of the pitch over the ring. It was quite an event. And then, we were doing constant ongoing maintenance. We're coming in twice a year with the boys who were in about a fortnight ago, did a full week here. You tested test everything going on, keep a report, changing back of house speakers, because they would say now we changed probably 3/4 of all the 100-volt line kit. And it's a constant, you'll see some old Pentlins around as you walk around, but it's anything new now is going in is EN54 compliant, but it's not something you can just do with a drop of a hat, because we're still finding, you find a room, we didn't know it was here all the time. So, and then there's Stuart, that's our match day control, which will take you in. So, first one there, any questions on that? Stuart, what's physically going on there? On the left. What's going on. So that'll tell us anything that's physically going on at any one time. And then from our point of view, we were like in a Nexo had a great involvement from our point of view, which was very, very good. Baldwin Boxall on the back of house, 100-volt line, voice alarm side of things. RH Consulting, where Richard Northwood was used, because what we did then, later on, Richard came in after he'd worked for Nexo. He then came to work for us, and then actually came in at the end and took readings and signed it off on behalf of the client of saying what you've got, and we made a few adjustments based on his reports. But again, it's a constant tweaking thing. Cambria Consulting, they were the structural engineers I mentioned earlier. So we worked closely with them with the design of those brackets. They were signing off what's your weight loadings and all that, and they would do an awful lot for the client. Pro Steel, I mentioned, were the people who were doing the roof work, but they did all the bracketry for us. And they've done, they're into doing serious steel works. That's the best way of describing that. There's QSC, because we got QSys in there, so Diogo and Ben were a great help. Diogo's done all the, those of you who know Diogo, he's done all the control, processing, design of it, and that's of it. And then obviously Ben from AudioLogic. And then also Alex from a client's point of view, because he's very clear what he wanted, which is help, and you've got questions, go back to Alex. And then Darren Crossman, who's not here today, but Darren is the FM manager, and he's the health and safety manager, and he's the match day safety officer. So we've got a close working relationship with him then. And then sort of final thing, you asked about, because dealing with a local licensing authority, we got a constant dialogue going on with them, because that's been going back since the stadium opened, and then giving them training on how to use the touch screen and what little things like that all the time, but it's not something that's going to popped up on my laptop, yeah. But it's a sort of thing there. We didn't have to, because it was a refurb, we didn't have to treat it as a brand new installation, because it was just a case of tweaking it and then making them aware. And what we also do then, generally once a year, they'll have a full shutdown about power down on a weekend. So if with the Orly failures, because on a match day they're running 2 generators running, and you've got the mains running. The voice alarm runs off its self-contained batteries, and they got a battery bank here. So it's pretty, unless you had a major catastrophic failure, shouldn't lose power. So generators are running in tandem, and then the mains is almost a third fallback. So, and then all that systems were in place where we got the racks, so we didn't have, again, then we didn't have to worry too much about that, because that's the sort of client-supplied thing. So that, from my point of view, we're giving you some idea of what was involved in actually physically installing such a system. The high-end technical stuff now, Stuart, Diogo, because I think you'll pick up on that later, but if you want to fire us any questions now, I know how we want to do it. If there's any, Jim can come in and bring them in. And answer it.
Yeah, thanks for that, Richard. Brilliant presentation, lots of information, really informative, and I think for me, sort of seeing the video of the guys on the dolly sort of building the arrays up was really interesting, and also just to understand the kind of scale of the decommissioning, looking at all those community horns, etc. So yeah, brilliant presentation. Thank you for that. So yeah, I think we can invite some questions. Do we invite them from the floor first? Yep. So if anyone's got any questions.
Yes.
We've got a mic there for you.
Cheers, thank you. Hi, Richard. You mentioned earlier about the fact that one of the drivings for it was to increase the experience for the customer.
Yeah.
Was that the main driving force for what happened here, or was it an upgrade because of old age, or a change in requirement?
Well, I think it's, in fairness, the kit itself was 99 it opened, so in a place like this, you're probably going before that. the amplifiers are getting tired, you were losing. Speakers, when we changed it in 2010, in fairness, weren't many drivers lost there was community in before. There weren't many, but there was a bit of reconfiguration going on there. Bigger issue we had there was cable losses.
Right.
Because of the amplifiers they had back of the room, like I said, up to 160 meters away, some of them, they're not, if you're putting the amplifier right alongside it, great, but if you're 160 meters away, you're not getting a lot coming out of it, which was an issue. There was a bit of, there were external crossovers, which we changed then to individually driving them. But yes, it was 25 years old, and it had timed out, and also there was other stadiums overtaking them as well, because they were what the experiences and what they're trying to do on the pitch.
Sure.
You know?
Also, I had another question as to what happened to all the old kit, because my van's empty, but you've already got rid of it, so that's a shame.
5 skips. You know, it's all, like, we do it in work now. You think, oh, it's great to keep that, it's great to keep that, and you look at it then 2 years later, and it's still bloody there, isn't it? We're all in the same boat there. So,
Thanks, Richard. Cheers,
thanks,
mate.
man. And there's no Inter-M installed on the system.
Got any more questions from the floor?
Yeah.
Rav? Got a
Rav.
mic coming to you, Rav.
Yeah, I was just wondering with the line arrays, because presumably there'll be some events that are run here which don't have full capacity.
Yeah.
Do you have the ability to kind of disable certain boxes within the line array? Is it kind of modular?
Well, that's where Francois, I think, will come in now. When we go outside, they'll give you a much better idea, because we're going to have a screen over in the box, and they'll show you what it's capable of playing with. And because you've got Francois, Richard. Am I right in that now? When we go over there, they can give you a full idea of what you can cut down, because we often get asked to do that. They play a finals day here, and you'll only have 2,000 in here, so it's obviously a challenge. And then last week, Alex, you had the open training day, didn't you? They open up the lower terrace, and then it's like half-term week, and they just do an open training session. But we'll just feed it low down. We don't have anything flying around at a high level. Yeah?
Richard, you said
Oh, sorry.
you said earlier that your voice alarm system, the Bolden voice alarm system,
Yeah.
is for all the back of house and
Yeah.
in internal areas, and that you turn the match day system on, the
Yeah,
bowl
well-
system on for match days. How do you cover people that are working on maintenance in the bowl during that time? Is there any coverage for them?
Yeah, well, on a match day, and the stadium will actually, the two will interface together then. You could still make a voice alarm announcement into the ground as required without a problem there, because you've got from the mic, we don't actually physically switch it off, but the things we do shut off are obviously the fire alarm contacts, things like that.
Okay.
It's a lot more control now than it was before, because we did I think, and also you're trying to deal with, because they've got interface going into every rack as well. But now with the newer system, now we're only going into the lower level racks and the control room. But in the bowling box or voice alarm will go through the Nexo without a problem.
Yeah.
When you need it to.
Okay. Thank you.
Is it Brew at the front here? Yeah.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Brew from Wimbledon. Great presentation. You kind of answered part of my question there, which was kind of where does it all hand off between the Baldwin box or QSIS and the kind of live event production stuff. How do these suites fit into that? Are these just treated as part of the VA system?
These are just treated as VA systems, and then in most of the suites, I know the other two, we fit because we kitted them out, and they got fire alarm interfaces shut down. But this particular suite was 3 boxes being knocked into one. So there's a recent change, little things like that, and you will find that. Where we are, our own point of view from operation, Lucky and like that, we actually operate on a match day, so we're able to do a lot of things where we don't have to. It's not like a football ground, which is going Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, where you just turn it on with a switch and away to go. This one here, because there's so much going on, we actually come in and manage the whole situation on an event for them, whether that's a concert, a rugby game, or whatever. That's how we do it in this. But then when it reverts to what I call 9 to 5 use, it's voice alarm with interfaces. So if they've got something going on, the fire alarm interface will come in and just shut the local system down. But then I admit then, as then when you bring an outside event in, it brings another thing where personally then it's down to good management then as well, I wouldn't keep talking if you had the voice alarm going on.
And that's brilliant, perfect. And maybe we can chat more because I'm really interested in how you tie that all in. My second question, you mentioned about the power, and you've got local Jennies and you've got shore power. So you don't have UPSs or anything like that local?
No, because we got permanent power, and they've got a UPS we can show you down there. Yeah. They've got UPSs as well, which we used to use for the old voice alarm, but now since the ball and box has come in, that's self-contained. But they have got some pretty, were they chloride or gents do? Were they gone? Sorry, they got big power banks with batteries. I can show you those in the rack room. So that's our permanent power. We haven't got UPSs here.
So that's a handoff, is it? So the stadium effectively guarantees the power to you.
Stadium.
So you as the PA
all standby power here is by the stadium. That's Alex will answer.
Hi guys. Yeah, we effectively on a major event day we become an island site. So we have main DRUPs. So we go off grid. We've got our own DRUP system that powers all the systems in the stadium. In the event of the DRUPs failing, we fall back to our backup generators. There are 2 main diesel generators that will kick in. And if they fail catastrophically, we go back to mains. So we've got 3-phase, but obviously the PA system, the box-to-box system is all on the critical life system. So they are maintained throughout then. So obviously supported by the various UPSs in the rack room.
Because on this one, I know in other sports we've done, we've got UPSs there to hold the system for 4 or 5 minutes when you've got that 30 to 60 second changeover. We had one recently where they had a power grid and they hadn't done anything about it. Left the quadrant go down, went to switch it on, and even though everything kicked back in, the problem they had, because they'd lost the switch, the Nexo amps didn't kick back in automatically. So you had to physically go and hold your finger on them. They all came on fine, but it was half hour before a kick-off. It's not it's not experience you want to have. Or the.
Thanks for a fantastic presentation. Really interesting.
Right,
I'd just like to ask a little bit about the logistics of the installation. You obviously had a very narrow installation window to get the job done.
Well,
were there any? Sorry, if you want to.
Well, what he was saying then, the bowl itself we did in about 3 months of physical work, but obviously we were able to prep. We had to build it around lead times, what is coming in. So you'd be getting a call off next of ball and box all. Well, this rack's coming. You plan around that. Doing the changeover of the voice alarm is a bit more critical than doing the changeover of here. So we had to keep it going. But because the racks came in ready-made, we were able to keep it down to a minimum. You'd only lose a day, maybe 2 days maximum of a side of the ground on the voice alarm. In the ground itself, the physical work was about 3 months, we reckon. But on top of that, there was probably about another 2 months doing rack preparation, but rebuilding the racks upstairs and down. Because we had to, obviously, when you see the location of where the actual rack's on, it was either a case of rebuild them or get a crane in to get them up on the roof. So it shows the format. And then I would say the total project was probably around about 7 months. We had at the end then, like I say, finding 200 end of lines, of which you probably know where 100 of them are, but then finding the last few, the real find. But you've got to have someone there, Tony's old dead 100-volt line person who knows how to trace faults. And then there was another thing there, and you find little things then, get the earth in with the ball and box, you need the earth to come back with the neutral. So we have to do a few earth for monitoring against cable tray, things like that, because anything like that, you'll all have the same school when doing 100-volt line, but electricians putting them in. They're quite convenient for forgetting to put certain connectors on for you. Connect red to black, and then that transformer's got a purple, so I'll put that one on as well. So I said, usual, nothing, you get your impedance meter out, and it's just a case of patience then. And then, like I say, we were able then, as you come in, do a lot of preparation back of house. You'll see what we were doing, putting the line arrays together. And in fact, it's down to good management, because sometimes you'd have, you can't work in this corner today. Well, we got this. Let's make 4 clusters up, and things like that. It's a case of.
Were there any particular curveballs with that you had to navigate?
Well, just lead times and working with that. It's lead times and that, because we were right at the start of Brexit as well, which didn't help. And then Paul's on the phone to Gareth and giving him hell, and then onto Nexo, and then where's your stuff? Oh, it's in customs. Or it's little things like that, which were curveballs. The other one who was saying that, like, from, even though we've gone on the infrastructure, another one picked you was the wind effect or the wind factor for your bracketry and all that, which in fairness, the structural engineer comes back and asks us those very questions, and then we were able to get that information of Darren because they've got a wind factor here, which obviously they're taking when the roof is open. So even though you think it's enclosed, there is a fair little bit of wind up there and things like that. So that's another, talking about curveballs. Like I say, bird netting I mentioned. And like I say, the other whinge I said was lifting that bloody hoist up onto the gantry, because this hoist is about 7 foot high. We had to take it apart, get it up there. And 110 voltage was a problem as well, because even though you put your transformers up there, there's limited power up on a place like that. And when you're running 3 or 4 long extensions together, you didn't have enough current at the end to drive the bloody hoist. Things like that, But it was sort of, when you got the boys are experienced, and you got someone there to think for themselves and get over it, which is a great challenge. It was a great result for us. But I think lead times was the main challenge, especially at the time we did the job. Are we off of time, Jim?
I think that we probably need to wrap it up on that. Yeah. But have we got time for a couple of online questions?
Yeah.
Yeah. How do we? Have we? Somebody delay those through to me.
All right.
Oh, right, sorry about that. So I guess that's a wrap for that session then.
Well, only there's one other I was asked by someone else. They asked about, had we thought about putting the amplifiers on the gantry? Well, hopefully I've answered it there, because the infrastructure was a no. But the other question we had, because we did think about it, we're getting more power with the subs, was A, we were given weight restrictions. So, lack of primary and secondary power, which we just mentioned. And physical size up there, because they were in the middle of doing this floodlight upgrade, and any spare space was being taken by the lighting voice controllers, because they got, when you see it, they got full coloured LEDs, a fair amount of switchgear gone up there. And I think, Alex, you've had a Wi-Fi install as well, haven't you? Now it's been upgraded, which, yeah, they've had, you look as the panels are up there and all that's going in, so everything had a major. And the other one, from my own personal point of view, you've got your racks out there, which are all accessible. This particular place, once the gate's open, you can't go on the gantry, end of. You've got to go up there and reset an amp or reset a switch. Unless you're part of the Marines coming in with the flag and abseiling down the front of the stand, you ain't going up there. So it's so hope I've given you a pragmatic view of what went on and when we did it, from that. So thanks for that.
Thank you, Richard, Paul, and Stuart. Fantastic presentation. I think now we're probably going to mobilise to do the tour. Not quite sure how that's happening. We just meet in the follow Alex. Okay, so following the demonstration, I think we could get back here, I don't know, 1:10 obviously, people online, if you can join us back at 1:10, that'd be fantastic. Thanks for watching. Thank you. Right, welcome back, everyone, and welcome back to the people online. Those here in person, I hope you enjoyed the demo out in the bowl as much as I did. So we can all agree it's quite impressive in terms of clarity, especially for an unoccupied stadium. Just an announcement for people online before we introduce the next seminar. Sarah and Ros will be monitoring the online sort of chat, so if anyone's got any questions, then please feel free to add those to the online chat. So just to introduce the next seminar, it's by Francois Defage, who is Engineering Support Director at Nexo. Francois is going to talk about his long expertise in stadium design, and I'll hand it over to you, Francois.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jim. I'll do my best for the people that are online to really keep my microphone close this way, so that all is clear. Well, thank you, ASV. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, PI, for the invitation here. So this presentation is a little bit about sharing the experience we've been having over the years with stadiums. And maybe I will start, before I move to the next slide, with I'll try to be as short as possible, but with a little bit of a personal experience. Something like 30 years ago, if you remember, the Soccer World Cup, the Football World Cup was organized in France, right? And we had the Stade de France, which was a project. And at that time, I was at Nexo doing a thesis in acoustics. And Eric Vincenot, the founder of Nexo, came to me and said, you know, François, instead of this boring theory, don't you want to enter a little bit into practical projects? You know, why don't you do the design for that project so that we can submit it? So there I was. The stadium did not exist. The speaker did not exist. So we had to model everything. You know, it was the alpha, for those of you who remember that. But anyway, the alpha was just a concept at that time. And this is where life takes you sometimes, you know. Had we lost, I would have gone more probably somewhere else in another direction, but we won. And anyway, and we won, and the way the contract was done was that Nexo and the integrator had to be, I'm sorry if I don't know the perfect English expression, we were tied together. If one of the two companies would have a problem, the other one had to take over. And you know what occurred? The integrator bankrupted during the installation. So Nexo had to take entirely over the project. They did not bankrupt because of the sound, they bankrupted because they've been quoting the cable trays tens of miles in such a stadiums, you know, with the wrong reference. And so that was enough to kill the company. At the time, they had to give the proper reference. That's how it goes. But anyway, so suddenly, yes, not only I did the design, but then I had to be in the roof in the Stade de France for at least 6 months to have that thing working before the World Cup. We had the Security Commission coming in November 97. And anyway, so this is to say, and by the end, it was fantastic because at that time, it was the biggest sound system ever installed in a stadium. Not to put too much credit on Nexo, but at that time, they were already scared of terrorist attack and these kind of things. And so the usual sound systems for security could not do the job because they were not loud enough. They wanted 106 dBA everywhere. So it had to be concert system. And so from that time, the level of sound in stadiums really increased dramatically. You know, it's not... For those of you who remember what stadium sound was 30 or 40 years ago, it was essentially about, you know, it was public address for voice, essentially, right? And anyway, so it was great. It's been successful. By the end, I remember I walked in I was telling this morning in the elevator to someone that if you go to a stadium and you walk less than 10 miles a day, you have not been in a stadium, okay? Because that's how it goes. And at that time, so all the equipment was in the roof of the Stade de France. And I mean, for 6 months, I believe, I was there and without taking a single day off until it would work because the pressure was very high. But anyway, so you see that connects me personally a little bit with Nexo. This is what really took us to that business. And in fact, gave us a good deal of understanding, not only about the design side, but also the integration constraints. So anyway, so that's a little bit of the story. And so maybe what I'm going to say here is kind of basic, but let's still review it, you know. What is the need for sound systems in sports arenas? Safety, that's the first fundamental thing, is that sound and video today are responsible for the safety of people. Which means that at the times there's an incident, the message must be intelligible, because if it is not intelligible, it will add to the panic and to the stress. So it has to be clear, it has to be... So that's, I would say, that's the first top responsibility. It's people's safety. Then, of course, we need sound system to entertain the audience. So, for example, here you can see opening and closing ceremonies. We had the Olympics last year in Paris. The closing ceremony was at the Stade de France. So, yes, for this kind of events, we need a good quality sound system. It can be DJ music. I'm going a little bit beyond the stadium focus, but for those of you who are familiar with ice hockey or basketball, I mean, there's a DJ mixing, and there is sound all the time. In every interruption, there is sound. So music is definitely fundamental. Anthems, okay, in football, when we have the Six Nations tournaments, yes, there are anthems being played. Depending on the sports, in the case of football, it's interesting because during the game, there's not that much. There are the announcements for the goals, and there are the announcements for player replacements, and this is essentially it. Okay, during the game. Again, basketball, handball, and so on are very, very different and a lot more active sound-wise all the time. So we have to look at that. Something which might come soon. We don't know. It's currently being tested by the French football organization. You know, the audience contests so much the referee decisions today, yeah, that they want the referee to be capable to talk to the audience and explain and, you know, what he's been doing. That's very challenging because it means that it's typically a lavalier microphone that has to talk into the system without feeding back, being clear. It adds a level of complexity to the intelligibility because, of course, we have the sound now feeding directly into that lavalier microphone. I'm not sure if it will occur. Here, Principality is the name of the stadium. It was named Millennium before, I believe. Stade de France is still Stade de France, but more and more the venues are now getting these naming contracts, you know, so they get the name of, okay. So they have sponsors, they have people who are going to rent VIP lounges and so on that are going to play commercials. So this is money, revenue. This is basically important revenue, so we have to be careful of that. I like here Macron, of course, which sounds familiar to me, but anyway. Nothing to do with the subject, okay? But anyway, yes, when we're playing commercials, it should be clear, otherwise the people who are playing the commercial, who are paying for the commercials are not going to pay for it, as simple as that, okay? That can be discussed, but not so far. Back, this is old again, back at the Stade de France, there was this thing. The Stade de France acoustic was kind of dry because they treated the roof in a very absorbent way. Yeah, and when you go to a game, the first thing about sound is not the PA. The first thing is the crowd ambience. People want to be there, and they feel they're in the game because they hear the crowd around them. And so this requires typically live acoustics, which contradicts with the fact that we need dry acoustics for intelligibility for the sound systems. And anyway, so at the Stade de France, we implemented, because this was the very early stages of real-time convolution. There was this card called CP4 from Lake. And so we've been putting 16 microphones in the roof, and we were real-time convolving with these microphones here to reconstitute what would be, to reproduce what would be a reflective roof. So it was about, and we could enhance the level of the audience by 3 dB. But anyway, after a while, the system became unstable, and, you know, it would cause many issues. After a while, the system was switched off. I also hear here in UK, when I admit that idea that we could enhance the crowd, that it could create problem with the people in charge of security, because they don't want things like, you know, enhancing the crowd, which is already very loud. So I'm not sure it will go there. And then immersive audio, probably many of you have heard about all these things on immersive audio. So for sure, at some moment, immersive audio will enter, you know, in venues, but it's going to take a while, I believe, really a while. And one of the reasons it's going to take a while is that today all the algorithms for immersive audio are not for the audience outside the speakers, but are for audience inside the speakers. So the algorithms which are being used today for immersive audio are not applicable, literally, to stadium. But for sure, at some moment, I don't know, because there are strict regulations, but, you know, the fact that we can hear the sound of the ball, the fact that we can hear what we hear on TV, yeah? You see how the sound has been progressing on TV for the games. We could imagine that at some moment there will be some live caption, yeah, live caption, you say, yeah, that could also help the audience to be closer to what's occurring in the field. But anyway, not today. We have to be, when we design, we have to be cautious because there are different rules. in terms of SPL requirements instead of what is being allowed to be played in the system or not, because the PA can eventually have an influence over the game. So, for example, in NFL stadiums in US, there are super strict rules. You know, you cannot do anything you want. NFL, that I know, is the one with the highest dBA requirements. They're really typically around 110 dBA permanent. Okay. When we look at FIFA, UFA, we're typically around 105, 106 permanent. Again, permanent RMS, not peak. But anyway, baseball is less demanding. So anyway, again, when designing for a stadium, we definitely have to be familiar with, you know, the rules that are being applied and the standards that are being applied to the different sports. Should the sound system in a stadium complement, substitute a touring system? That's a difficult one. You can see here an example, you know, of a front of house system. And yes, eventually these clusters, or even these clusters, are not going to go all the way down. But, you know, there is something when we use systems as delays, is that there's a fundamental point, which is that the direction of the main PA and the delay speaker should be, you know, significantly the same. I cannot time align systems which are going this direction and this direction. Or I cannot time align a system which is this direction with a system which is going vertically this direction. So the reality is that, yes, sometimes, including here at Principality, the house system is being used as a complement. But you see, if you look at that picture, it cannot be these side clusters. It's going to be typically the top cabinets of the clusters which are opposite to the stage. See what I mean? And this is the only place where we can use and actually properly time align. Otherwise, we're going to create echoes everywhere. And then there is a second question also about that, which is very sensitive, is that all these stores, they come with their own equipment, and they do not necessarily want to connect to the house system because they don't know, they don't have the time to check how the house system is working or not working and so on. They don't want to, how would I say, take the risk or take the chance of having something they don't control. So anyway, but yes, typically it can be used as a light complement, but definitely not substitute to a front of house system. So when we design, clearly we design for what's going to occur as sports events in a normal configuration, with some exception I'll talk about later. But anyway, so all in one, you know, it's about engaging the audience into a unique experience. This has been said by Alex, this has been said by Richard. It's really, sound is about, you know, bringing emotions and improving the involvement level of the audience into what's happening. Okay, so then we're at Nexo and we hear about a stadium project and we receive a plain view of a PDF and that's all. And no, this is not, you know, if we're really considering doing a stadium, we will not design just from, you know, a plain view from a PDF. This is clearly insufficient. So what do we need at the time we start designing? Well, we need clearly a very accurate model. Okay, this can be 3D SketchUp, can be AutoCAD, can be Revit, can be, but we need something very accurate. When I'm saying something very accurate, I'll go over it afterwards. No, I can go on it now. So we need to know the available cluster locations, of course. We need to know the rack room locations for everything which relates to cabling. We need to know about the shadowed areas. There's a little bit of a trap here. Quite often, the acoustic models, yes, are eventually oversimplified. We don't need this level of detail to make a proper acoustic study, etc., of what's going to occur in the stadium. But sometimes there is a danger of oversimplifying. If you look at Principality here, of course, we're going to look at the under balconies, and clearly there are shadowed places which can be immediately identified. That's no problem. But quite often, and this is the case if you look at the VIP lounges over there, and these do not necessarily appear over the VIP lounges. You have plexiglasses. Yes, this is so that the VIPs don't get the beer cans on their heads. Yes? Okay? And these quite often are not shown in the acoustic models. However, they're still in the shade, yes, of the clusters. So you see, we really have to be very cautious when we simplify the models about having there what is absolutely relevant acoustically. And I mentioned about the sponsors, but yes, here and in many stadiums today, a significant proportion of the revenue of the stadiums is about these lounges. So I'm not saying that we have to make the sound there much better than anywhere else, but I'm saying that it should be at the minimum at the same level. It cannot be less for the people who paid 10 times the price of the ticket. Yeah, you stop me if I'm saying things that are not obvious. Sorry. Of course, we need room acoustics information, clearly, so that we can build up models and so that we can do some ray tracing. We need reverberation time, empty stadium for a statistical approach. We need this information on how the stadium is going. I'll make it very clear. We had a couple of cases at Nexo where we've been submitted projects, right? And clearly, and we did the models and so on, and we could not achieve the STI values. We could not achieve intelligibility. And reason for that was that the reverberation was too high and had to be treated. And we did not go to these projects. We declined in going and offering a solution. This is salespeople would eventually kill us, you know, because every time we're talking about 200 or 300 people. But we cannot take Nexo, especially for a voice evacuation system, we cannot, you know, take a chance that in fact a Nexo system will be installed in a situation where it's not intelligible. That's, you know, we don't want to be trapped there. No way. So, and in fact, in 2 of these cases that I remember, in fact, they ended up treating acoustically. Yes, and so they thanked us for alerting on the fact that independently from the brand, they could not achieve the goals. Yeah. Okay. So we need, because intelligibility connects to reverberation, but intelligibility also relates to the background noise. Okay. Obviously, if the sound system is not powerful enough and cannot go about the crowd ambience, then there is no intelligibility because I can hardly hear the message. So yes, the background noise hypothesis is very important. See, this is Macron, and this is next to him is Putin, I believe. Or anyway, that was France-Russia, I believe, during the World Cup. The last World Cup we won, was that 2018? Yeah, could be, could well be. But anyway, so he shouts loud, but he doesn't make as much noise as these things, you know, because these monster trucks, it's literally horrible. It's so loud. And then you have to play the PA above that background noise. And I mean, very quickly you get headache because it's so loud. And your brain is focusing, trying to understand what the speaker is saying inside this level. And it's plus 3 dB at night. This is all it can generate. This typically can create conflicts, right, once the stadium is open. So yes, environmental regulations we need to have as well. And then, of course, we have to look at standards. You've heard many times the EN54 naming this morning. There is also, so this is relates to fire alarm. We have the EN5849 also, which is about evacuation, including for open spaces. British standards and FPA 72. So we have to look. So I'm not sure if today EN54 is still applicable in UK, but I think that still many consultants keep on specifying it, if I am correct. Yes. But anyway, so yes, there are standards, and if we have to comply to a standard, we have to design accordingly, very clearly. Okay. And this was mentioned also this morning. If the installation is outdoor or semi-outdoor, we need weather conditions. That's super important. Back to the Stade de France. Again, I'm sorry to go back to that example, but we had a tempest on the 26th of December 1999, just before the celebrations of year 2000s. And in the wind, under the roof, the Stade de France is open below the roof. They measured winds of more than 200 kilometers per hour. Okay, it happens once. It happened once in 30 years, but once is enough. So yes, we have at Next, so all our rigging systems are certified by TÜV, but they're certified up to 72 kilometers per hour. Theoretically, at above 72 kilometers per hour for an outdoor concert, the system should be taken down for the audience safety. But in a stadium, of course, very likely we're going to have these values or more. So yes, we need the assistance. A standard rigging system will likely not do the job. So we need definitely the assistance of structural engineers who are going to make their computations, and we need to have independent certification companies, independent bodies who are going to say, yes, this is fine, you can do it, or no, this is not fine. So we have to be, again, very cautious. It's not only about voice evacuation, it's about not having speakers falling over the audience. Okay, so, all right, we need humidity, temperature, sun exposure. These are important. Temperature is important for the rack rooms, if the racks are in the gantries, for example. Sun exposure is important for the painting. This is going to tell us, you know, how long the system can last. So all these informations are really important and might condition the fact we go or we don't go, or that what we do is suitable or not suitable. Okay. Quite often, not quite often, but in a very systematical way, in the standards or in the specifications given by consultants, we're going to have intelligibility being specified. So this is just quickly, typically, to make it simple, it's STI with some variations of the STI PA, male, masking effect, etc. And this is to evaluate if we will understand the messages. So the value is like typically 0.5 or above. That's what should be done by all systems. And it's, you know what, it's kind of a miracle that we can do a measurement, have a number, and that number will say, yes, I will understand, or I will not understand. You know, it's understanding is a very subjective thing, because it relates to our education, it relates to the way we hear. But anyway, so I like this slide very much because it explains a little bit about how the intelligibility was the mechanism of intelligibility. In fact, the first, before STI, there was the ALCONS. ALCONS means articulation loss in consonants. It's a percentage. And it is currently admitted that if you lose more than 11% of the consonants, you will not be capable to understand the meaning or to, you know, fill the gap of... because this is very Western approach. These kind of criteria do not work in Asia, okay? In Western cultures, you understand me because of the consonants, okay? And the consonants, P, T, etc., are transients. When the vowels A, E, O, U are like permanent, yes? And we will not confuse on vowels. In some Asian languages, like Japan or like Vietnamese, yeah, there are minor changes in vowels that we are not capable to distinguish, which totally change the meaning of the word. So anyway, so you see, these are the transients, these are the vowels, yeah? And to make it simple, for those of you who do a little bit of electronic, I'll make it very simple, one dimension, yes? But the reverberation in a venue as a first approach, it's like a capacitor electronically. It loads and unloads, okay? And so there is this, what is called the constant time. Reverberation time is like a constant time, if you wish. And you see, if constant time is fast enough, then the consonants will keep on emerging. Yes? But if the constant time or if the reverberation time, if you wish, is too slow, then the consonants will not emerge from the vowels, and this is where we lose the meaning. So that's the mechanics about intelligibility. And you know what? To be honest, it's not only about speech, it's about music, because music is also made of transients, and a good sound system should be very respectful of all the transients. So anyway, so if we're good for music, we're good for STI. System performance. So I think I'm missing here. Oh, I took it off by accident. I'm sorry. Well, if we talk about EN54, for example, EN54 asks for a frequency response that goes from 500 Hz to 4 kHz. Okay? So that's very likely efficient for the voice and for intelligibility, but you know, it's not going to give the audience a fantastic experience in terms of sound. Okay, so very often we see tenders specifying 80 hertz or 100 hertz up to 12 kilohertz, which is okay, but you know, when we listen to music, even 100 hertz doesn't make it sound very good. You know, it's we're definitely missing the bass information, and so going full range, because this is what we want, requires subwoofers. Okay, 30 years ago this was not considered, but today almost systematically, yeah, we're putting subwoofers in stadiums. You've seen them here, once every 2 clusters. We have 3 L18s, 3 18-inch subwoofers in cardio mode, so that we don't send the low frequency to the roof, and we keep it focused on the audience. Of course, it's not, when we're not being asked, we still quote it as an option. And this is a subjective appreciation of quality. For what is needed in a stadium, typically speech, okay, music, animation, you know, do we really need to go down to 31 hertz? Well, the immediate answer would be no. But you should know that your subjective perception of quality of sound and the audience subjective perception of quality of sound is kind of transformed by the ability to reproduce that low frequency range. The people go, wow, this is like in a home theater, you know, it really, wow, there's the bass, it's really nice. So this is, you see, again, on a pure functional point of view, not mandatory, but for the experience, it is super important. Okay, that's what we see. We're never going to dimension the subwoofers the way they are dimensioned for a concert system. Okay, you see here we have 3 subs for 16 S12, so 1 every 5, let's say, to make it simple. This is, we're not going to play the subwoofers at maximum level at a 106, but when we're playing music at a good level, when we're playing commercials, when we're playing the videos you've seen here, you've probably heard in the video, you know, yes, there is this, the last octave is there, and this is really, really nice. We need, we need targets, okay, for levels to be achieved on the stands and on the pitch. How it should be measured, you know, we need calibrated sound level meters, you know, so that we're not going to argue for 0.2 dB and everybody is agreeing on the value, okay? We need to consider what is the test signal that should be applied, pink noise, filtered pink noise, AES 75 and music noise, etc. We have to agree on what we do there. And I wrote here for the pitch, but I will talk about the pitch a little bit later on. So system performance, okay. When we design at first, yeah, we have to look at the coverage consistency. We at Nexo, we typically, when we're looking at the coverage consistency, we don't look at dBA. We look at the summing of the octaves from 1 to 8 kilohertz, because the appreciation of a coverage of a loudspeaker, if I walk this way or this way, is very much where my ear is the most sensitive, okay? And this is in the mid frequencies. When I hear the high frequencies dropping, I say, oh, I'm off coverage, okay? But there are very few cabinets, if any, that really control at 200 hertz or 500 hertz directivity. And we're not going to evaluate, we typically evaluate the coverage of a speaker when the mediums and the high frequencies are dropping, okay? So our coverage, our first coverage evaluation is a focus there. And then we will move to dBA to see the consequence and to see how consistent we are in terms of dBA values. Okay. We should talk about speaker position. You see, this is a little bit of an ideal case. This is a 360-degree arena, essentially with a strong focus on basketball, if I'm correct. That's in Prague, in Czech Republic. You know, color maps are really nice when you look at color maps, but there are many things the color maps don't tell you, okay? And one thing clearly, especially when we go to intelligibility, and when we go to the pleasure of the experience, you know, we have the cone of attention, okay, which is in front of us in terms of audibility. If I hear a voice behind me, typically I'm going to move this way to have that voice. So it's not pleasant having the sound coming from the back. We typically much prefer have it coming from the top or, or preferably from the really front. This is very challenging in US stadiums because in most of the US stadiums are not covered and you have no other choice than putting the speakers at the back. It's not very nice for the sound experience. And the intelligibility, if the sound is in my cone of attention, coming from the front, is definitely higher than if it comes from the back. Yeah, but no STI measurements done with an Omni mic or no STI color plot is going to show that. Yeah. Okay. So about the weather conditions, I mentioned wind and so on. We see there's a little bit of confusion, I believe, on. There is this trend of saying, okay, the speaker has to be outdoor and should be IP55, IP56, or whatever. This is far from being enough to say that the cabinet will stay outdoor for 5 years without any problem. Because IP is it's one standard, which is about the exposure of the electrical parts to dust, solid objects, or liquid. Yeah, but it's not going to tell if the box is going to rust or not. We have pollution, we have sulfur pollution, we have salt pollution. We have the sun is maybe one of the worst enemy for wood cabinets. Okay, so you see, you have all these parameters that you have to look into if you want to make sure that your cabinet is going to last for typically 10 years, because a sound system which is installed in the stadium is there for at least 10 years, okay, if not 15 or 20. Okay, so we have to look at all these aspects. And obviously, at the time I did my hundreds of miles into the roof of the Stade de France, this would not be accepted today any longer, okay, because we need software and we're not going to ask the sound engineer to every day go walk, check everything. He has to get that information at the console. Okay, so in the control room, he will have all the defaults and he will have all the controls. So we need that. Redundancy, very important. So I'm not going to go too much into a network thing, but anyway, fixed IP, protection of the network so that nobody can connect from the outside, okay, which caused some problems to Rich and myself this morning. Anyway, so protection of that, redundancy, if at some moment something falls, all that is covered by Dante. We have something which is nice at Nexo, but has not been implemented here. We have the ability to back up the output of the amplifiers, like, for 70 volts or 100 volts systems. This is very common, but low impedance, this is only at Nexo. So we can have up to 5 amplifiers, 1 backup, and if there is a default in one of the amplifiers, the outputs are going to toggle to the spare units. Okay, so we're talking about toggling 25,000 watts of power, right, into, provided the inputs are the same. We're toggling the outputs, okay? So anyway, redundancy is, redundancy is about risk analysis, basically is what could possibly go wrong. And then there was a little bit of discussion here also about that topic. The EN54 standards has many different interpretations depending on the countries in Europe. If you want to be capable to back up the NX amps we have here at Principality, we probably would need UPS that would be 2 or 3 times the size of our amplifiers in terms of rack, okay? Because I forgot exactly, but I think the requirement is for something like 60 minutes or something like this. I'm not sure 100%, but it's very long. And plus, these batteries have to be checked every year. They eventually have to be changed and so on. It's not very realistic, simply because EN54 was not intended for places like this. So the common scheme that we find most of the time is, yes, the power, the backup generator, and UPS, so that we can move from one to the other without interruption. So this is not 60 minutes. This is, of course, a lot shorter. But this allows the DSP to keep on functioning, the consoles, everything, without interruption. Anyway, again, to be looked at case by case. And then there are things which are a little bit outside specifications, or that we do not necessarily think about. The speaker elocution is I can have someone in the field here with a microphone, and the guy, he really hears, the ambience, and he's going to talk with a clear voice, with a clear rhythm, yeah. But I can have someone else who has headphones or whatever, and he's not listening at all to what's going on, and he's going to talk very fast, and this is going to be, So the quality of the elocution of the speaker is fundamental, like in airports, like in train stations, etc. And I should compliment ISCVE, by the way, because I heard that ISCVE has a training program about speaker elocution so that people can learn how to properly talk in such environments. And this is really, really important. It's the first time I hear about such trainings, by the way. We need, again, this is a outside system specification, but I really suffer for the sound engineers who are working in stadiums, because most of the time they're locked behind windows. So they have this enormous, PA system which costed hundreds of thousands of pounds, euros, and the guys behind the console simply don't hear what they're doing. And rarely they're permanent employees. Quite often they're freelancers, So one freelance, and I went to visit a stadium once because I was asked to evaluate the PA, which was from a competitor. So I was not very comfortable. I should not be asked to do that. But anyway, I went. And to be honest, the PA was fine. The problem is that the guys who were mixing, the window would not even open. The problem of the sound quality in that stadium was 100% the fact that the mixer was not in proper environment to do his sound. Okay, you're at the console, you can hear your speakers, and you're happy. Yeah, but how can you ask a sound engineer to do a proper job when he's not listening to what he's doing? So again, that's super key, I believe. And you know what? Budget-wise, it's very small, but I believe there's a headroom for progress there, which is massive, really massive. Aesthetic integration, okay, that's a Dailan Stadium in China that we've done some years ago, and you can see the speakers are behind the velums, how you call them? Yeah, they're above the, okay, so it's super beautiful, super nice. Many times the stadiums which are being constructed now are pieces of art in terms of architecture. Yeah, you cannot come in and, put ugly clusters everywhere like this without any consideration for the architect. Of course, maintenance, fundamental. We can deliver a fantastic installation, but if 6 months later it doesn't work, that's a problem. I'm a bit astonished that there are some stadiums which are done for World Cups, and so fine, they work for opening, closing ceremonies, but 6 months later, yep, the sound system is basically totally off, okay, which is a bit annoying, I believe. Anyway, so yes, it's a big investment, and that investment has to be protected with proper maintenance, proper verification, etc. That's anyway. That's more or less what I wanted to say, and now I'm going to go a little bit more into what Nexo has been doing for PAI and for the stadium here, and how a little bit about the story from our perspective, I would say. So, of course, I came here, if I remember well, I came here in 23. I came 2 times back in 23. So I came to visit the stadium here. I think the very first discussion we had was about using the existing location for the cabling. So was the cabling structure capable of integrating an Nexo system or not? So we had to look at cable sections, we had to look at cable length, all these kind of things, just for feasibility. And from there, I came a second time together with RH Consulting, because we did not have reverberation values for the stadium. And Rich was saying that what you've heard today is the worst, because it's empty stadium with the entire PA on. He was not totally exact, because in reality, you still have worse, which is closing the roof, because today you had the open roof. So we had to evaluate all that. And so we did measurements, open roof, closed roof, so that we'll get the RT values and see if we could do the job or not. So then we move into NS1 model. This is the Nexo simulation software. And you see I'm summing here from 2 to 8 kilohertz, not even 1, 2. And then we start, doing the design. I'll go over that, but you'll see this is what is actually implemented today, okay? But we had to do some iterations. In stadiums, the quadrants are always very challenging. They're challenging because you need a very wide coverage in the quadrants at the top, and you need a narrow coverage at the bottom. So you cannot treat them as the main stands. Anyway, so we do that. We run the prediction. You can see we're within plus minus 1, plus minus 2 dB maximum in that frequency range. Okay, for coverage. This is what we. This is typically what we're looking at when we do design. We don't want more than that. Okay, and then we move into either there are two softwares for acoustic predictions that are essentially being used, which properly model the speaker systems, and these are Catacoustics and Ease. Ease is the most common one today. So then Ease will allow us to have not only the direct sound, which is in fact the same that what we get in NS1, but will allow us to have all the values which this time feature the interaction of the room, the interaction of the venue. Okay, so we're talking about intelligibility, clarity, we're talking about D to R ratios and all these kind of things. And I don't want to be too technical, but anyway, there is a way of running Ease kind of fast. This is called statistic model. So it assumes that the reverberation is the same everywhere. It's okay, it computes fast and it's easy, but it's a little bit far from reality because the reverberant field can vary depending where we are. And so then we have to go ray tracing. So ray tracing means that these are powerful computers with possibly computations which are going to run overnight. Okay, so when we get to the end of the models, when the project is kind of on the way to be finalized, we will run ray tracing. Yeah. But if one cluster is changed, then boom, you have to run again the ray tracing and so on. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but it's definitely time consuming. Okay, and from there you see, so this is the values we measured here in terms of reverberation, and it was tricky because when we did the measurements with RH Consulting, we had teraplast, on the field, yeah. So we created the model with teraplast so that the values we would find in terms of reverberation and localization would match. And then in the Ease model, we replace the teraplast to get the to be replaced by grass. Okay, so this is how we've been computing the things. Okay, and you can see from there we get all the STI predictions and so on. So yeah, we really had to enter into detail, and of course we also had to evaluate again open roof and closed roof. Anyway, from there. We get an equipment list, because at some moment we'll have to talk money and we'll have to talk budgets to see where we go. So this is all done by my department, engineering support. We will look at block diagrams, we will look at rack rooms. All this work Nexo is doing, yes, we pass it to PAI, and this is their property. Okay, this is this project, and we're being extremely cautious not to create any possible conflicts. So we pass that, and then, of course, there are many, I'm simplifying a little bit, but there are many, many round trips, right, with PAI about, but can we do that? And the subs, can we move them this way? And so on, so on. It's, anyway, we will provide this kind of data also. It's about heat dissipation, power consumption, etc., so that the racks are properly, the racks that you've seen downstairs are properly cooled and powered. We'll give all that. The cabling section, in the case here, that job was done ahead for feasibility study, very simply. Okay, we're going to look at the rigging. You see, we have the frames here, and these parts are standard Nexo accessories for which we did specific computations, okay, for higher wind velocities. Okay, but then we have to look at the forces on the clusters, you see, so I can evaluate with wind, I can look at where I am in terms of safety factor, etc., etc. I have a safety factor of 4. I'm in fact getting a little bit close to the limit of what is allowed by Eurocode. Eurocode makes 4 mandatory as a safety factor. If you go below that, you're not allowed, basically. And you have all the forces on all the speakers, kilonewtons. I'm going to pass the details, otherwise it's going to be too boring. That page you've seen earlier. Okay, so this is the ability to control and monitor the installation properly. And this is a little bit specific to my department. Of course, we work pre-sales, okay? So Rich, Nick are going to come to us and say, hey, François, we have a lead for that project and blah, blah, here are the drawings. Can I have a section view? Thank you, etc., etc. You know, these kind of exchanges. But it is systematical that on the project, the definitive height is not the one that was foreseen at the beginning. Because in any work, okay, during the construction, there are changes which are going to occur, which require follow-up, okay? You cannot, you know, assume that what you've designed originally is what is actually going to be installed. So you have to follow up. And we do that all the way down. I'm not saying we do that all the way down for every single project at Nexo, including projects with 2 ID24s. But for everything which is really visible or critical in terms of safety and so on, yes, we'll do that. And we will go all the way to the end to do all the measurements to confirm that it's fine. And if there are issues, it will be on us to fix these issues. Okay, so you can see here the values that were measured, empty stadium, the level, the STI values we found. Here, Nicolas and Christophe and Stuart, at that time, that was November 23, if I remember well. And we found some points that were a bit critical from that time. We find values which were low, especially in the quadrants. Okay, so the coverage of the quadrants, the upper quadrants was not sufficient. So we've been putting, I forgot, but I think we've been putting 4 additional speakers per quadrant, if I am correct. Yeah, we had 2 originally and we moved to 4. Yeah, we had 2 originally in the quadrants, and that was not sufficient for the horizontal curve. Yeah, so we've been doubling that, you know, so you see when I'm saying, you know, going all the way down, it's a commitment, you know, that PI makes together with Nexo, and we go all the way down to that commitment. All right, the first game, can I say, the very first game that occurred here with the new PA was France-Wales. I'm not going to say anything. Guess who won? Ooh. Anyway, so that was nice. No, it's very, very nice celebration and fantastic opening. And so so great thank you to PAI. I'll quickly finish my presentation anyway. Of course, with that level of experience that we have and support with stadiums, yes, we have many, many references. I've not been updating. We're working quite a lot in Morocco today because there is the World Cup that will occur there and so on. So last news from Morocco, where when I'm talking about that, you know, it's about gantries which are moved, you know, 10 meters away from the original position, you know, and so you have to reconsider everything. Really, following up is crucial, okay? So, you know, we do arenas, we do Swansea Stadium, which is, 20,000 people, and we did it with point sources, plus series, not line arrays. But the reverberation conditions there would permit to do point sources. When it becomes too reverberant, obviously, there's no other choices than line arrays. Stade de France, I already mentioned too many times. You can see here, and you can see, I did not talk about the pitch. Just let me... You see, we have these clusters here. These are the main clusters. And you see these guys here. Yeah. This is 32 S12, which are just for the pitch. The requirement there is not 106 dB, it's 96. Okay? But when we have projects, quite often, there are no speakers for the pitch. If the venue manager, if the organization which is managing the venue considers to have concerts and audience on the field, you must be capable to talk to the people on the field. So you must have a pitch system. Again, not calibrated to the level of the, but anyway, and yeah, that's fundamental. I'm not going to go over dramatic events, but you remember 2015 when we had the terrorist attack in Paris, in the Stade de France. Yeah, people at the end of the, they let the game go. People went out, and when they went out, there was a rumor saying that there were still some terrorists outside. So 20,000 people got back into the stadium, yeah, on the pitch, okay, which was the first case. We always talk about voice evacuation, but the standards now for safety have changed because the stadium can also be considered as a shelter, you know, from a threat which is outside, which is exactly what occurred that day. And thanks to these speakers here, yeah, the authorities could talk to the people on the pitch and tell them, look, you're safe here, don't move, and at the time we will tell you, you can go outside, now it's safe, you can go. Again, you see, super important. To be honest, I was to be at the Stade de France that evening with my sons, and it was packed, so I could not go. And then I heard about the stories, and I was online with the sound engineer there on the telephone and so on, and he managed super well and so on. I was very, you know, anyway, we anticipate all that. We anticipate it because it might happen, and sometimes it happens. Optus Stadium is a fantastic reference we have in Perth, in Australia. You can see here, specially designed rigging system. You can see it's open here. So the computation node, the structural analysis for that cluster is 250 pages, okay? Because the wind velocities are super high, and you have subwoofers which are integrated together with the S12. And here we are again. And maybe a last one. So this one, you know. And Toyota Stadium in Japan, which was hosting the World Cup of 2019. Sorry, just before the COVID. Okay. And that's one of the latest references we have. It's Everstone Stadium in Liverpool, which is also a nice, super nice reference for us here in UK that we're very proud of. And anyway, and I don't know, Rich, how many times we've been there. A little bit like here at Principality, you know, quite often. There's a nice hotel next to it, which is called the Titanic. You know, we're very familiar with it. And anyway, so this is, yeah, this is end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Francois, for a great presentation delivered with enthusiasm and passion.
Thank you.
A lot of the checks and challenges I think I can relate to as being involved in stadium design. In particular, I think the one about pitch coverage is one that's kind of one of my pet subjects as well, because you're quite right, quite often you don't see people consider that for evacuation purposes, etc. So great to see that mentioned there. Have we got any questions in the room? Francois. Zav?
Yes?
I was just wondering, with the STI values that you produced there in the modelling, were you modelling those with, assuming the empty stadium, or did you make
these values were, yeah, we systematically model empty stadium.
Okay, right.
Because in French, how do you call in French? In French, we say ceinture, the belt, bretelles. You know,
belts and braces, yeah. Belts
how
and
do you call them?
Belts and braces.
Yeah. So in French, we say we do belt and braces. Okay. So we take the worst hypothesis systematically. So what you've seen there was closed roof, if I'm correct, closed roof, empty stadium. But it's not unrealistic because I had some people saying, "What? You want to evacuate the cleaning lady?" Okay. But it's not unrealistic, and I'll tell you why. Because if here it's 75,000 capacity is Principality, I can imagine I bring 10,000 people in. 10,000 is already quite a lot, and I let them sit wherever they want. Yeah? Well, I still have to manage these 10,000 people, and 10,000 people is not going to change the acoustic dramatically. See, so always taking, so that occurs. Of course, if we're lucky, if these 10,000 people are only on the lower stands, then we're going to mute the upper speakers and so on, and that's easy. Sure. But again, taking the worst case hypothesis is good, because, you know, once everything is finished, you want to be at the values. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of pleasantly surprised how good those STI comes out, considering the RT really. So
it's a good question. For example, FIFA and UFA, maybe I can have your opinion there, Jim. They ask for 0.5 intelligibility, full stadium.
Occupied, yeah.
Full occupied stadium. Now, how do you measure intelligibility in a full stadium?
With a great deal of difficulty. I believe it has been done using an iterative process, usually swept sign, but at a very, very low level. But I'm not necessarily convinced, but yeah.
Yeah, and not very practical at the time you want to commission and make sure you're inside the contract or not.
It's too late by that time.
It's too late by that time. You see, so it's also a realistic way because this is how the measurements are going to be made. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yep.
Richard, is it? Got another one here, Richard.
Who would you say are Nexo's main stadium solution competitors, and what would you say Nexo takes you above those competitors?
That's an easy one. That's an easy one. I'll be very humble. I mean, there are competitors with excellent speakers, okay, which can do. I said earlier that when we won the Stade de France, we had all the major competitors against us. And again, it's the specifications which were very high and which led to that quality. It's not Nexo. It's because they wanted to have 106. It's because they wanted to have low frequency and so on. So, I mean, the starting point for quality in a stadium is specifications. Then, I'm not going to name, but you know them better than I do. We have a significant amount of competitors who are doing their job properly. Now, what differentiates Nexo, I believe, to most of our competitors, and this is what makes us successful in that business, is our commitment as a manufacturer. Okay, let me tell you a stupid anecdote, but you're going to appreciate it. Some time ago, there was a project, and we had a competitor that really wanted to have that project. So he gave away the speakers. Why not? And then when the measurements were done, the system that was given was not at specification. And it was on the integrator at his cost to replace that sound system with something that would comply. Okay, and so he came to us, and we made some kind of, we made an analysis for the project, and we say, yeah, we can do it. And he came to me, he said, but are you saying that you're taking the responsibility if it doesn't work? I say, yes. Oh, and he found that so beautiful. You see the difference? Yeah. Stadium, it's not about, sorry to say, it's a volume of loudspeakers which are important. It's a big budget, yeah. But that cannot be the only driver, okay? So we are very involved, very cautious. I have guys flying from, talking about Morocco. I'm being called on the Monday afternoon, and I have someone on site at 8 o'clock in the morning the day after. This is the kind of things, you have to be capable to deliver. So maybe that's, the service is the difference, and the commitment.
Good answer. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We got any more questions? Sorry, Jim at the back, yeah.
You mentioned the IP rating of the speakers, Francois. Do you offer any enhancements to compensate for sun and pollution and things like that? I'm thinking of the Everton job, that being near the saltwater base of the Irish Sea.
There are some very strict maintenance guidelines to be applied, especially on the metal parts. We cannot make the metal parts for rigging cannot be stainless, because stainless metal is too weak. So then it's about how to properly maintain, so it's about spraying some, lubricants and so on, so that, when you clean these, so it's about maintenance, really. When we see from time to time, nothing critical, but we see surface rusting on the screws, yeah. It's a matter of cleaning, applying that protective, coat on top of it, and that coat, in case of maintenance, typically, our maintenance recommendations at Nexo is that the systems should be taken down every 3 years. Of course, we're not going to take them all down at once, so it has to be a cycle thing, yeah. And that part is part of that, okay? But it's Everton is challenging for that, of course.
I'm sure. Yeah. Thank you.
Any more in the room before we check online? Oh, sorry, we just got one more.
I heard you mention the B word, budget. Can we talk total project cost?
I have another PowerPoint, but I'm not going to make it. I could do it, but I've done a presentation some time ago about budget. What's the cost of, because you should know 3 dB more on a sound system is twice the budget. Okay, as simple as that. So there are some mathematics there. Okay. If you want subwoofers, extend the low frequency, it also has a cost. And so I had this presentation with an equation at the end, okay, very nice, and that equation would give you more or less the public price of the installation depending on your specifications. But clearly, for example, Geo S12, I mean, we have kind of a good level of experience now with our speakers. And I also had to do this because I was internally in my team, because it's 12 people in my team. And if you ask a stadium to one, and if you ask a stadium to another, they will not necessarily do the same design. So I had to harmonize. And now I'm asking systematically for double check on stadiums so that nobody's ever alone on the project, which is reasonable. But anyway, for example, S12, one box every 400 people, okay, to achieve 104 dBA, something like this. So if I have a project very quickly, I can see where we're going. Yeah. And if it's a project where we're below 100 dB, we're not going to go, because 100 dB will not allow to do what you're supposed to do. So there is a price per dB, there is a price per etc. I don't have it. I don't have it on the computer here. But anyway, no, and this is being recorded and streamed, so I will not show it.
All right, thank you, Francois.
No, please.
I don't think we've got any questions online, have we? No? Okay, well, just remains for me to thank you again, Francois, for a brilliant presentation. So that brings the seminars to a close now. So the next thing is lunch, which will be an opportunity for people to network again. And it also just remains for me and the team here to thank everyone for coming. Thanks to Nexo for sponsoring the event and for the presentations. Thanks for PAI, so Paul, Richard, Stuart, thanks for the demo. And also thanks for the staff here at the Principality Stadium. So Alex and Tallulah as well, thank you for your hospitality and for showing us around. Just like to ask people, if you're not members, to consider joining the Institute. If you are members, to get more actively involved. And lastly, think about signing up for iSpecs next year. It's March next year. So anyway, that's it from me. I'll let you go and have your well-earned lunch. And thank you again for coming. And thank you for the people online. Hope you've had a good time viewing. And hope to see everyone soon. Thank you.